All right, we are live. Good afternoon here in Pacific time, and thank you for everyone participating and viewing in this public postmortem. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and go over a few things. Whoa, we went into Inception for a minute there. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we sure can.
Okay, great. All right, so this is a blameless postmortem. We will not focus on the past events as they pertain to could've or should've. All follow-up action items will be assigned to a team or individual before the end of the meeting. If the item is not going to be top priority leaving the meeting, we won't make it a follow-up item. So briefly, I was the incident leader for this incident, and on May 19th, the incident was that we experienced a brief SSL error shown whenever someone ran Berks install, and Berks was pulling cookbooks from the private supermarket, or the public supermarket, excuse me. As for the timeline, all these times are in UTC. At 21:56, I upgraded 2 of our supermarket prod nodes from 2.52 to 2.60. That was the new release of Supermarket. I also upgraded a couple of cookbook versions that we use for configuring our prod nodes. At 22:09, I ran Berks install and noticed that I was receiving this SSL error saying that the host name does not match the server certificate. I asked in our internal chef Slack if someone else would run the Berks install just to confirm what I was seeing. 22:24, someone did that. Followed by that, I declared an incident. 4 minutes after that, after getting oriented, I moved the 2 upgraded supermarket prod nodes out of the supermarket prod ELB. Fortunately, we had only upgraded 2 of the 4 nodes, and doing that did exactly what it was supposed to do. We upgraded half of them to see if any errors start showing up. So after I moved those out, I was immediately able to confirm that I no longer saw the error when running Berks install. A couple of people in IRC reported the issue. I was not in IRC at that time, but Noah was, and he DM'd me to let me know people were reporting issues. 22:43, Lamont was able to report that Travis runs, which ran Berks install, were working again. At that point, I answered the Chef IRC channel to check out the people who had been reporting the error, and everyone reported that it had cleared. And then I declared the incident closed. Is there anything else anyone thinks we should add to this timeline? All right, hearing none. Let's go over to contributing factors. So what happened was the 2.6 release of Supermarket included a commit which changed us from using a hosted style S3 URL to using a path style URL. And the reason we did that is public supermarket uses an S3 bucket to store the cookbook artifacts. And we had the original URL we were using, which was this one right here, we discovered only works when the bucket is in the North Virginia AWS region. And we thought we might have customers who'd like to run their supermarkets outside of the AWS North Virginia region, so we decided to change to using this style URL, which is a path style URL. Once we made that change, code reviewed it, and deployed, anyone who was attempting to do Berks install saw this error, and the diagnosis on this was not just not matching the server certificate, but that there were dots in the bucket name. So it was attempting to go to communityfiles.opscode.com.s3.amazon.aws.com, and that didn't work. It was seeing, I think, opscode.com as the domain it needed to go to. So what we did was we removed 2 of the 4 prod nodes, the 2 that had the upgraded package. After we removed those from the ELB, I downgraded them back to Supermarket 2.5.2. Impact was that for about 53 minutes, anyone using Berks install saw that SSL error. And as for corrective actions, I think we need to decide whether we want to revert back to the old style of URL or we want to change the supermarket bucket name to remove the dots in it. If we do decide to revert back to the hosted style URL, I have a pull request in to make it configurable. Let me just pull it up real quick. What this does is it adds an environmental variable so people can configure their supermarkets whether they want to use the domain URL or the path style URL. And then I added in some documentation around that. And that's what I see as a likely corrective action for right now. If we can have dots in our bucket name, that probably means that other customers can have dots in their bucket name too, so I'd rather we not make it so it would break if they did that. However, by making it configurable, we at least have a way around it if needed. And that is about all I have. I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment so I can see everybody. And all right, is there anything we need to add?
So now I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
First, thanks for putting this together. I'm looking at the timeline, and it looks like you're calling the time to resolve was at 22:49. But given the outline of the timeline, it seems to me as if once you removed those two servers from the ELB, that should have resolved the issues. Although the rest of the time was spent verifying that the issue was actually resolved. Is that the case?
That is the case, yes. I think what happened was the people in IRC, who we were very grateful for reporting this, saw the error, and then it took a few minutes to report it in IRC.
Okay, sure. So then what I would recommend in the timeline, or as we measure the time to resolve, that time to resolve should end at the time that you took those two out of the ELB. So that would be 22:36 instead of 22:49.
That sounds good. I will redo the math on the time to resolve.
Yeah, no problem. You don't have to do the math live. Right. I'm not asking for that for sure. And then, so then I think the other questions, right, that we should ask is how could we have detected this sooner and how could we have resolved it faster? And so I don't think that, I don't think your pull request fixes either one of those two things,
That's
right?
A good point.
But let's just talk about that for a moment. So your time to detect the issue was 13 minutes, which maybe isn't terrible, but what could we have done to detect that faster, do you think?
What we could have done was, if we don't already have a list, we'd have a list of certain smoke tests that we run whenever we do a deploy to staging and a deploy to production. We need to make sure that is on that list. I don't remember off the top of my head whether it is or not, so I'll add that as a corrective action, and then make sure we carry those out on staging beforehand, and then do it on production immediately after deploy. I first saw it in the 13 minutes because I did the deploy, and once I confirmed that it was done, then I started running the smoke tests, and it took me that long to get to that point and be running it.
Gotcha. And that you're talking about is doing a Berks install. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. Yep. And so if we had done, would we have caught the same error in staging had we run a Berks install in that environment?
I'm uncertain on that because I'm not sure if the staging bucket has dots in it, or the staging bucket name has dots in it.
Interesting. So, of course, while we would like to detect it faster, we'd also, of course, like to prevent it. So this is a thing where I think one of the things that we learned from this is that when staging, the further distant staging is from production, the more likely we are to introduce a bug, let a defect escape into production before we're able to catch it in staging. So I think that as an action out of this, we should, number one, make sure that the staging S3 bucket name matches the production name so that they are similar. So in this case, it would be dots in the name.
I was gonna say, yeah, we can make them similar. They can't be exactly the same because
of course,
flat namespace, but
yep,
which we know something about.
Yep. Yes, and since we know that it was the dots in the namespace, we can certainly make sure that the staging bucket also has a dot in its name to sort of replicate this. And then the other thing, of course, as you mentioned, is to ensure that Berks install is part of that process, that smoke test that we run, and that those smoke tests get run in staging and production before like before a deploy in staging, obviously, and immediately following a deploy in production.
Got it. Cool. All right. I'm going to share my screen one more time just to assign these. Where'd my screen share go? There it is. All right, we're going to get really meta for a second here. Ah! All right.
Nell, I have a question as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
is it possible to run that smoke test before we put the node back into the ELB?
If we want to upgrade each node individually, we can do that.
Okay,
Though actually, no, because the uh, domain name is attached to the ELB and the application nodes can only be accessed through the ELB.
perfect, perfect. Just wanted clarification.
Yep. All right. So what I will do is I will make sure that the staging bucket has a similar format to the production bucket, as well as ensuring Berks install is part of smoke tests. Then we have the question whether we want to revert back to the hosted style URL or change the bucket name. Reverting back would be easier in the short run, I think. And we do have to face the fact that some of our customers might have. We should support any bucket name that AWS supports, I feel. So I'm inclined to go with the configurable environmental variable. Are there thoughts on that?
+1 on that.
Okay. So I'll go ahead. That's already in progress as it is. I'm going to remove this. All right.
Yeah, I definitely agree that we should support any bucket name that S3 supports.
Right.
My initial inclination is we should get rid of dots in the bucket name, but I think that just causes, like, that opens us up for additional failure
Correct.
because, like you said, our customers, like, we'd have to add additional documentation around that, and things could get pretty tricky. I do think that we should probably add some additional documentation, though, around the S3 bucket, and as you add documentation about this configurable option, maybe discuss some considerations when naming your S3 bucket.
All right. And I will assign that to me. I could probably do a lightning talk about that, come to think of it.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think we looked at the time to detect. What we didn't talk much about was the time to resolve. Is there something that could have been done to resolve that faster?
Uh,
I'm not sure that there is. I'm just asking the question to make sure we discuss
I
it.
don't think there is. The response was very quick on it. Once we any lag time that there was around confirming that there was an issue, and confirming that we were all seeing the same issue.
Yeah, from the time you declared an incident to the time that it was actually resolved was 4 minutes. So that feels pretty good to me.
Yep.
I also wonder, with 2 of the 4 upgraded, would the errors have been consistent for everyone? Like, is there a potential that your Berks install would have hit one of the 2 that hadn't been upgraded, and that would have worked fine?
I tried it several times, and I saw the error for each one, so I'm uncertain of the response to that.
Sure. I don't think it actually matters much. Just want to sort of think through all those different scenarios.
Absolutely. All right. Anything else we should cover on this?
Yeah, I think the only other thing that we might want to consider, and I'm not sure if we have this in place or not, but if we think about what happened here, like the Berks install started failing, that in this case happened to be as a result of a deployment. But what if, like, do we have a monitor that just runs a Berks install with even a simple cookbook that executes on a regular basis and will fire off an alert if that Berks install fails?
We currently do not. I'd be willing to add a task to investigate that.
Yeah, I think that I think it would make sense to capture that, and that's probably work for the ops team or for this.
Right.
Yeah, it's definitely work for the ops team to add, and of course we can help them with that. But to add an alert or add a monitor that does a very simple Berks install and have that execute on a regular basis.
All right.
There is a potential, had that been in place, right, there's a potential that while you were walking through the smoke tests or while the smoke tests were running, we may have fired that alert even sooner, which would have improved our time to detect and our time to resolve. And then also if we're able to run those same tests in staging,
Correct.
that would help.
All right. Apparently there's two of me now because my thing crashed briefly. But I assure you I'm still one person. Yep, all right. I've added investigating adding a monitor and executes it on a regular basis to the to-do items.
Awesome.
And I went ahead and assigned that to myself as well. And I think that might be about it. All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone who viewed this and everyone who participated. I really appreciate it. And I wish you happiness in your day, and I will be submitting a blog post in the Chef blog with this postmortem write-up in it that you were seeing on my screen. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and stop the broadcast.
Awesome.